What would you like to do in the future, and what aspects Korea and other countries can refer to for the development of smart cities?
Yeah. It's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. I guess obviously we're in Korea and in Bristol and the west of England and the UK and around the world, the pandemic has created many disruptions. It's also created many opportunities to think differently about how we live and work in the future. In the UK, many of us are now continuing to work at home or closer to home. We're having to adapt the way that we live. Everything from how we shop, to how we learn or teach people, to think about how we plan our journeys and our travel, to think about logistics, and importantly to think about health and social care. I recognise that in Korea there's a great deal of expertise in many of these areas. How to deliver health and social care in an era of COVID is an issue that's common across both Korea and the UK, and one that we need to think about how we collaborate on. I'm very interested in how we move from the smart city to the smart neighbourhood. How do we start to think about the very local opportunities that perhaps have been overlooked in the past when we've thought about smart cities? Often we think about the city centre, and we think about the city centre networks and the applications for people who are travelling around busy and congested city centres. I think in the future we also need to think about livable neighbourhoods, and we need to think about how the smart city can become hyper-localised. How can it make a difference in very local communities? And I think that's an area from the time that I've spent in Korea where I think there's real opportunity for collaboration. How do we ensure inclusive, livable places that benefit from the innovation that Smart City can deliver?
Thank you, Mr. Stephen Hilton. Mr. Stephen Hilton have talked a variety of issues, including smart city project in Bristol and things for the development of smart cities, and in particular, the ways of means of cooperation between Korea and England, UK, amid the coronavirus pandemic, which is very interesting. Next, I would like to talk with Professor Young-gun Lee. Professor Young-gun Lee served as the commissioner of the Incheon Free Economic Zone from 2015 to 2017. Incheon Free Economic Zone has been developing the districts of Songdo, Cheongna, and Yeongjong, where Incheon International Airport is located, Yeongjong, and has carried out a representative smart city project that created something from nothing. This is different from the case of the city of Bristol and the smart city in the UK that was introduced earlier. First of all, I would like to ask you to introduce the features of the smart city of Incheon Free Economic Zone.
Yeah, thank you. Hello. Firstly, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this talk show as part of the third Smart City International Symposium hosted by Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport and the Incheon Metropolitan City and sponsored by the British Embassy. To start with, I would like to introduce you the IFED Smart City and its smart technology. IFED was designated 2 years after the opening of Incheon International Airport in 2003 in order to invite foreign capital, providing incentives for foreign companies such as tax exemption benefit and the land supply at construction cost. IFED is a core region that can reach 156 cities around the world with over 1 million people within 3 hours flight, and is located just 1 hour drive to the capital Seoul, proving to be highly accessible. IFAD consists of three spaciously separated districts, Songdo, Yeongjong, and Cheongna, with one single operation center. Here you can see the changes occurred in the three districts throughout the years. The IFAD Smart City Operation Center is located in Songdo, which was built on reclaimed land and transformed into international city. Project of development and implementation are still in progress and are expected to be completed by 2030. Its growth in figures shows us a 17-year miracle. IFAD was built on the sea out of nothing. It has now 3,040 corporations, 15 international organizations, reaching a total investment of foreign capital of $12.8 billion. IFAD has a geographical advantage of being just a 30 minutes ride from Incheon International Airport, which won the Airport Service Quality Award for 12 consecutive years from ACI, able to reach about 100 million passengers when its first phase is completed in 2024. It also has the Incheon New Port and the new international passenger terminal located in Songdo International City, handling 1.7 billion TEU last year. IFAD is connected to the capital Seoul and other major cities in Korea through expressways and the central and the local railroad, demonstrating the emphasis placed in its connection and accessibility. According to urban planning experts, the shape and the fate have always been defined by transportation. Despite the COVID pandemic, this still means air travel. Therefore, future cities should be designed as aerotropolis equipped with smart technology, easily accessible to hub airport like Incheon International Airport. IFAD provides perfect infrastructure and highly qualified workforce with the best settlement area for foreigners. Songdo features global education with campuses for renowned national and international universities and the bio industry with the company such as Samsung Bio and Celltrion. Yeongdo International City with the Incheon International Airport focuses in logistics, tourism, and leisure, whereas Cheongna, which is the closest to the capital Seoul, is a financial and R&D center. Many influential media outlets from across the globe have seen its potential for growth and competitiveness. However, the rapid growth of IFAD results in a need for a more convenient and efficient urban management. With this in mind, IFAD planned to provide smart ICT services for the city. IFAD Smart City's vision is to be a global leading smart city. It means that we can offer smart city services to anyone, anywhere, at any time. IFAD Smart City is one of the safest cities in the world with its 24-hour city control system. It tries to improve the life quality of citizens based on the provision of convenient and efficient city services and the continuous creation of new services through a public and private profit-sharing model. IFAD Smart City's strategy is to create an integrated and sustainable city. The IFAD Smart City Operations Center integrates multiple districts to enable efficient management and cost saving. With sustainability in mind, IFAD was designed as a smart city powered by the best IT infrastructure and systems from the strategic planning stage. Under the strategy of one space, one system, and one service, IFAD is serving an icon of smart city in Korea and becoming a global smart city reference. One space, placing one operation center in Songdo, covering 3 separated areas. One system, the virtualized cloud system of the IFAD Cloud Data Center, enabling a better use of infrastructure resources. One service, making citizens' services equally available in the 3 areas of IFAD with its unique integrated platform. Its development plan can be divided into plan, design, action. The Smart City Strategy Planning started in 2005, followed by the Smart City Center and the Service Planning in 2007. The plan and the design stages took about 10 years, but the implementation of the Smart City Integrated Operation System took only 3 years. The IFS project can be divided into 3 phases. The telecommunication infrastructure was built in the first phase, followed by the integration of the 3 districts into 1 in the second phase. The third phase consists of the development, upgrade, and operation of the project, as well as the preparation to enter the overseas market. IFAD enhanced its brand value by enabling citizens to enjoy a safe and convenient life with the smart services created based on its public infrastructure. The smart city services in the private sector, such as education, healthcare, and smart homes, are delivered directly to citizens, resulting in an improvement of life quality. The most representative service of IFAD Smart City in the public sector is the Smart Transport Service. This service providing bus stop enables citizens to access information related to buses, subway connections, and official use from the local government. Each bus stop is also equipped with the emergency bell that allows citizens to ask for help. For the safety of its citizens, IFAD Smart City has built the integrated CCTV control service. When an incident or accident occurs, the surrounding CCTVs can be automatically monitored, enabling the IFAD Integrated Operation Center to respond immediately to any problem encountered. IFAD has played a leading role in smart cities with differentiated services and unique characteristics. It is only a local government with its own smart city platform solution, the first and largest cloud data center among local government, enabling central management and efficient response to various events. The only local government that established a smart city specialist providing smart city consulting services nationally and internationally, and finally one of the first projects aiming at fusing public resources and private capacities by becoming an open, innovative startup hub in the country. IFAD is the only local government with a smart city platform solution, able to collect, process, and manage city data effectively and promptly to provide smart services with IoT, AI, and big data technologies. The IFAD Smart City Cloud Data Center is recognized as the first public cloud data center among local government in Korea. It enables the effective use of IT based on its step-by-step smart city project approach. Another aspect that makes IFAD Smart City unique is the establishment of Incheon Smart City Corporation, a smart city specialist company operating the entire life cycle of the IFAD Smart City project. This enhances effectiveness and ensures sustainability and expertise. It is a leading government entity providing smart city consulting services based on the know-how and the experience acquired throughout its project implementation. Now, with the Smart City Sustainable Program, IFAD Smart City aims at revitalizing the local economy and creating job opportunities by supporting innovative startups with the provision of processed public data to create new services. It is expected to foster innovative companies that can improve competitiveness globally with the provision of optimal support environment to identify new businesses and service areas. It is also expected to enhance social cohesion with the participation of various stakeholders representing different sectors in the society, resulting in a better life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Young-gun Lee, for your kind and very detailed, not to mention exhaustive, explanation on smart cities developed by the Incheon Free Economic Zone Authority. The place where we are is located in the center of Songdo, the smart city, developed and still developed by the Incheon Free Economic Zone Authority. What a beautiful place, beautiful sky we have, and beautiful sea, beautiful land, and beautiful landscape, high-rise buildings, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'd like to share my experience in Songdo with the participants from the UK. I don't know if Mr. Hilton has been in Songdo, visited Songdo in the past.
Unfortunately, I haven't visited Songdo. I was in Gwangju last year, but we didn't have the opportunity to visit Songdo, but I have read about it.
Okay, in that case, we have to invite you to visit Songdo someday in the future, after the coronavirus pandemic outbreak. And okay, now my principal role is to moderate the discussion. But I'd like to allow myself to make some comments for completing the discussion. I want to talk about the Smart City Convergence Alliance and the national pilot project in Busan and Sejong. Smart City Alliance is a non-statutory group launched for the promotion of smart city by establishing a support system and to become the role of winner in Korea. Nearly 500 private companies and some public institutes are participating as members. Members' business area is enveloping a diversity of industries, including platform business, device and sensor provider, network service, consulting, system integration, mobility, energy, environment, building, healthcare, security, education, governance, urban and real estate development, construction, etc., etc. The Alliance's activity has four directions. Technical cooperation among members, development of a business model, and improvement of related regulations, international cooperation. Through the technical cooperation, members develop and build business models. The related laws and regulations are important for promoting businesses, for the reason of which the Alliance provides consulting to the government, thereby improve the regulations. These activities finally aim at promoting step-by-step strategic cooperation through private and public partnership in the dissemination and the expansion of smart city, both domestically and internationally. Now, National Pilot Project. It has been initiated by Korean government for the purpose of testing and realizing fourth industrial revolution technologies, establishing an innovative ecosystem, and proposing a leading smart city model of future. Two sites were selected in Busan Eco-Delta City and Sejong City. The project in the Busan Eco-Delta City has been implemented in an area of 2.2 square kilometers, planning to accommodate 8,500 population. While in Sejong project implemented in 2.7 square kilometers with 22,500 planned populations. The business entity is a special purpose company established based on public-private partnership. In case of Sejong project, the consortium led by LG CNS, LG is very big enterprise in Korea. LG CNS consortium has been selected as the preferred bidder last week, and the selection of the Busan Eco-Delta project bidder will be done next month. 3.7 billion US dollar will be invested in the Sejong project, specializing a number of fields including healthcare, education, energy, environment, culture, retail, job creation, and mobility in particular. The Busan Eco Delta project will be focusing on water management, environment, energy, healthcare, sport, etc., using technologies such as AI, robot to the fullest extent. As you may guess, those pilot projects as incorporating fourth industrial revolution related technologies and realizing a diversity of relevant solutions and services in a comprehensive way have the characteristics of a huge experimental city. Those cities, I'm sure, will serve as a substantial reference for the expansion of smart city domestically and internationally by proposing appropriate solutions and services for solving problems cities are facing. Now, I would like to add some more comments on it's not a comment, it's a comment. I would like to raise a controversial issue or argument concerning the smart city. First of all, let me try to define the smart city. For me, the smart city is an innovative networking type of city utilizing ICT and other applicable technologies as a means to create solutions for urban problems and enhance efficiency of city management, thereby to improve quality of life. Obviously, it is more than an integration of ICT and other technologies. Rather, it is a complicated ecosystem made up of physical urban spaces, urban infrastructure based on ICT and other technologies, and people. Not only citizens, but also diverse players and groups. Given that it is approached as a single system, as a whole, in other words, we need to approach it from a holistic perspective. Some issues should be taken into consideration in this holistic approach. The issue of decision-making method, bottom-up or top-down, mentioned before by Dr. Kapsung Kim, the balance of physical space and digital space, which is not less important, and the public perception of technological innovation. First of all, decision-making issue. A top-down approach can be more efficient and effective, especially in case of greenfield project focusing on urban management. But it is not in case of brownfield project or urban regeneration project. In the past, Korean government had led and implemented an important number of ubiquitous city, which is form version of smart city. My question is why many pilot projects in terms of ubiquitous cities did not lead to practical policies or business, but after a while. The reason is diverse, such as a rash decision by government, no consideration of views and ideas from people, local business, etc. For summing up, top-down decision-making. The core of smart city is people. In a smart city, people should be smart. Citizens, civil organizations, authorities, business should participate in the decision-making procedure in each stage of it, identifying problems, choosing solutions and services, choosing technologies, making action plan, making partnership with the private sector, allocating necessary budget, executing project, evaluating outcomes. As such, smart city will be realized in a smart and effective way. Second is public perception of technological innovation. Technology innovation have positive and negative effects, and also cause social acceptance, partnership, problems such as resistance from existing business. The negative effects of technology lead to the control by technology. And the positive effects to active acceptance. Confrontation on social and moral issues brought by technology expand trust on technology through citizens' participation and communications. But overall check is needed on technological innovation and relevant social and economic ecosystem. And third issue, not less than not less important than the previous issues. Balance between physical space and digital space. I think Dr. Kapsang Kim and Dr. Young Lee agree with me. Smart city cannot be defined only as digital space where ICT and other technologies are taking place, including physical urban space. I mean, physical space is an active recipient to hold a digital space. Furthermore, city infrastructure, city space structure, and buildings are interconnected and closely correlated. Interconnection between physical space and digital space can maximize objectives of smart city. For example, smart energy is not possible only through AMI, BEMS, smart grid, digital energy market, etc. Sustainable smart energy needs to precede on consideration of buildings and city areas before the whole process of energy value chain is incorporated. Other issues like monopolizing power of platform business, untaxed lifestyle caused by infectious disease, COVID-19 in case, which has a substantial and promotive impact on smart city expansion should be considered on the same level of importance, but I reserve it for next opportunity. And okay, I was more or less long. Now this is the question and answer session. So for the audience, you've watched the presentation of each participant. As many people are being connected to listen to this talk concert, they might have a lot of questions to ask. I would like to invite three experts to answer the questions received through the website following the order of the talk. And first question is going to Professor Kim Gap-song on how to manage systematically data, which would be huge and diverse in smart city.
Yeah, most people said in the smart city, the most important one is the key important element is data. I'm an analyst. From my view, if there is no data, I'm very happy because I can make the data with my own. But there are many data and big data collected in sensors and CCTVs and all things together. So I think that for the data, we should think two ways. One is there are plenty of data, and the usage of the data is owned by the specialist, scientist, and the social economist. Every specialist wants data to analyze for the study the pattern of the life and transportation pattern or some shopping pattern, something like that. Also, some company want to use data for marketing purpose and other purpose. So, in that sense, we don't need to collect the data in public. We just suggest where and acknowledge where the data is. That's the main point. So data center, we don't want to establish big data center. It should be virtual one. And we're making integrated platform and plenty of the data in the worldwide. So we can use that one. So openness of the data is more important than collecting. Okay? So maybe in the public, in the Korean government and Incheon municipality want to open the data, but in some way, if we want very detailed data, we cannot provide that kind of things in the study. So that's one. And the other one, another part is there are some objective to resolve the urban problems like the transportation or the air pollution, something like that. There should be special issues. And then maybe we need some data set. Then we can collect that one periodically and manipulate that data in somehow. So we should approach two different ways.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kapsong Kim. There is a question I'm watching in the monitor. A question from Ms. Julie Snell. Please introduce some inspiring smart city examples in South Korea. This question is going to, again,
I think Dr. Lee, because I think the number one smart city in the world is Songdo. So if you visit Songdo, you can have lots of experience in Songdo life with the very high technology. And also nowadays we prepare some new towns and with this smart city concept. So and also the Seoul is very expert in smart city. Mass transportation system is very popular. So if we use only one car for the many different mode can use, and transport is very easily, and then that's the worldwide popular systems, I think.
Okay. Second question is concerning to know what is the difference in approach of smart cities between Korea and UK. I think this question should be answered by Mr. Hilton. Could you try to answer?
Well, I can give a view based on the experience that I have from visiting Korea, but I wouldn't pretend to be an expert on Korea's approach to smart cities, although the presentations I've heard this morning have been very helpful. I think perhaps in the UK and in Bristol in the west of England, when we talk about a smart city, we often move away from the idea of purely being focused on efficiency. Whilst efficiency is very important, and governments and local authorities need to save money and to deliver services efficiently. So it's an important agenda. We often talk about smart cities as being a way to bring together different perspectives and different experiences in order to create the opportunity for new ideas to emerge. So there's a strong focus around Bristol and the west of England in bringing together the creative sector. We have a strong group of companies working on media and animation and user interface and experience. And if we apply those areas of expertise to our work around smart cities, then we get some genuinely different ideas emerging about how the smart city can connect with people and communities. I don't really like this top-down, bottom-up distinction because I think both are important, and I think both come together in this idea of the ecosystem. And in Bristol, if you came to a smart city event in Bristol, you'd be as likely to meet an artist as you would to meet a technologist. And the interesting thing is the conversation and the ideas that result from that collision between people from different backgrounds and perspectives. I'm hugely impressed with a lot of the work I've seen from Korea around smart cities. The work you've described around data, around transport, around mobility, around the future of flight, all of these things are really significant and equally as relevant to the UK. I wonder in Korea if there is the same level of involvement from the arts and cultural sector as perhaps there is in the UK, and that might be an interesting difference that we could explore at some point in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stephen Hilton. We have enough time? Only 5 minutes, 4 seconds?
And in my opinion, I can answer the second question. The
Okay,
UK,
the
I
first
think,
question, yeah.
It is based on the citizens and bottom-up type. but in Korea, government led the all policies, and private companies just look only the public government spend money, investment. So it's just different. And R&D and all kind of studies, research is based on the private companies and the universities in the UK, but in Korea, the government have the money and they allocate the investment into the private company.
So I'd like to add that
approach
there
is different.
are also living lab or police lab type smart city projects, which is ongoing in Siung or Daegu, etc. Okay. We have more time now. Surprise. and there is a question concerning the direction of Korean smart city. The question is as follows. Don't you think if it's necessary to establish a direction for Korean smart city by putting a modifier? Sustainable smart city or resilient smart city, etc., etc. If so, what kind of modifier you think? That question is coming to me, so I try to answer. I do not want to define Korean smart city with technical terms relating functions or suggesting a possibility, but rather in a philosophical or ethical way, placing people in the core. What I'm thinking is interdependent or empathetic smart city. As everyone is well aware, the society in Northeast Asian countries, Korea in particular, is strongly oriented, relation-oriented. In this type of society, others are not objectified, but basically considered being already engaged in terms of a relation. In case of objectifying others, I, as a thinking subject, consider them as objectified beings who have no relation with me, classify them with the nature or essence for or categorizing. This is to control others, not to mention dominate in the end. Cities are huge.
마이크
It is
테스팅.
impossible to know and engage each other as if we used to do in small village of past. In modern cities, people hiding behind the anonymity tries to control others and gratifies desires and selfishness in the name of freedom and right. This is becoming more obvious and serious with the pandemic situation caused by COVID-19. In this context, smart city is of utmost importance. Smart cities should be able to enhance citizens' connectivity, which has been impossible in the modernity with huge scale of cities and zoning system leading to separation. But the connectivity only is not enough. On the basis of owner spirit, we do promote relations with others, not in the way of power conflict, but of interdependence. Smart city will be able to continue to making people recognize being engaged in interdependent relations. When citizens think that they are engaged interdependently, they become empathetic, establish common goals of civic nature, and act accordingly. This is not collectivism or groupism, which means I'm identified with a group which I belong to. Pandemic situation imposed by COVID-19 will not be overcome by the untapped nature of smart city only, but by forming interdependent and empathetic relations. The response case of Korea to the COVID-19 would be an important reference for interdependent and empathetic smart city. I don't know if the participants, you like this answer. It is more or less academic and philosophical. Okay, first question. What is the comprehensive and scientific approach for smart cities?
There are many, I think, but the particular one is living lab type. So in the community, there are many people has interest in different things. So if we can identify what kind of problems in their community or the city is the living lab, living laboratory. So mostly popular city is Amsterdam, I think, and UK and Bristol and London and other cities too. They sit together and they talk about their problems in the community first, and then they can invite some specialists if they have find some problems, so they can have some get some help from the business firms or technicians and specialists in universities. That's the one wise kind of the method, I think.
Thank you, Dr. Kapsan Kim. Final question. I see how smart cities can respond to COVID-19 pandemic situation better than normal cities. I'd like to take an example of the COVID-19 contact tracing system, which has been developed based on a smart city data platform in March in Korea, which has been used and which is being used even now by the Korea CDC, Center for Disease Control. And last year, at the end of last year, the Smart City R&D project team, they developed the protocol of Smart City data platform. And then we are January, February on the point to apply in the test bed that platform, but coronavirus took place. And in March, at the beginning of March, the patients of coronavirus 19 in Daegu area has been increasing dramatically. Daegu is
Mic
also
testing.
the test
mic
facility of
testing,
Smart City R&D project. And the researchers and the government, Ministry of Land, Transport and Infrastructure, and everyone gathered and they
talk
made a
about the
brainstorming
mobility
how to
revolution.
tackle the
Most specifically
coronavirus
on
pandemic
high-test
in terms
smart
of
mobility in Korea.
as the Ministry
괜찮나요?
of Land, Transport and
공감이요?
Infrastructure
네.
and the related the researchers. Okay, you can develop on the basis of database of contact tracing system. Everyone is well aware contact tracing system in Korea, which is very efficient, very agile, and which has been used largely. And that's an example
마이크 테스트요?
that I can give you. Do you have any further?
And nowadays
Hello?
you can go to school or workplace. So maybe the home should be more
아 여기 에이미.
place to
Hey,
work
Dr. Amy. Hi, how are you?
and other all activities. So
I can hear you.
it's very important. And the small building
hello?
is
Can you
very
hear me
important
okay?
than the people, I think. So the urban
안 들리-
spatial structure could be different from the normal one in pandemic.
Can you hear me
system.
okay?
And so
Oh.
I think we should
Yep,
change
can you hear me?
kind of the urban structure.
Yes,
hi,
it's not very clear.
Hi, nice meeting you. My name is Sang-ho Chu. I'm moderating this smart mobility session. Can you hear me?
Dr. Kapsan Kim. I have to stop here.
Sorry, it's very hard to hear. I hear multiple people talking at once, so I'm not sure. Is that the same for you, Chris?
Hi, my name is Sang-ho Chu. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay, great. I will be moderating the smart mobility session. Yes, I just mic test whether you
Okay.
can hear me now. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Hi, Chris. Nice meeting you.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, okay, great.
Yes, good to meet you.
I'm glad to meet you. 네? 네, 보입니다. 조금만 켜주실래요? 제 눈이. 아, 좋습니다. 예, 예. 예, 예. 화면 여기. 예. 아니 근데 아, 예. 오케이 오케이. 예. 네, 이렇게 봐도 안 보인다 봐. 예, 예, 보입니다. 예, 이 정도면 될 것 같아요. 네네, 예, 예. 제가 살짝 고친 것도 있는데, 하여튼, 네, 하여튼, 보여주세요. 제가 좀 조금 고친 게, 좋습니다, 좋습니다. 그냥 내 사전지 이걸로 읽을게요. 제가 조금 바꾼 게 있어요. 네네네네. 좋습니다. 예. 제가 아, hello. 길게요. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tendai.
Nice to meet
Hello.
you all. I'm so happy to be here. 괜찮아요? I'm so happy.
예.
To listen to growing demand for new types of medical services, such as telemedicine, digital healthcare in a coronavirus pandemic situation. Third, a smart city data session to discuss data, which is a key element for efficient city operations, such as a smart city data hub.
그런데
and
여기서
data
만약에
marketplace.
동영상
And,
틀어주면
fourth,
여기에도
the
나오나요?
last, a smart mobility session to share
이 화면을-
projects and technologies
이 화면을 안
related to
틀어주시는 건가요?
various forms of mobility, such as autonomous vehicles and drones. Each session will be conducted in real time through the YouTube channel. We look forward to your participation, active participation. We'll wrap up
여기
with a
나오나요?
huge thanks to the British and Korean participants who joined us in a real time from the opening ceremony to the talk
Good
concert
evening,
today.
everyone. My name
Thank you.
is-
That's
Good
the
evening,
end.
everyone. Good morning. Presenters
Thank you.
and audience in the UK. My name is
We paved the way.
대망의 서울 지하철과 수도권 전기철도가 개통돼 문제가 지난 1988년부터 5년간 훈거지의 입주가 시작됐고 백달이 걸린 대역사
2001년 오늘 인천국제공항이 새로운 하늘길을 열었다. 2002 establishment of Kaya.
제가
Since South
귀로
Korea
듣고
should
화면에
continue to
PPT를
open
뜨는
up
거죠?
new possibilities. The era of indigenous aircrafts begins. The future depicted in films becomes a reality. World-class technology allows us to cross the ocean. Korea leaps to become a plant technology powerhouse. We expand our space vertically. We shift the general framework for means of transportation. Energy independence is achieved for the first time in Korea. The most precise security technology is developed. Humanity's dream is unleashed on the world's largest testbed. Mobility is enhanced for people with mobility impairments. The K-quarantine model receives global recognition. Advancement of land, infrastructure, and transportation technology directly impacts lives of all citizens. Kaya, the country's sole agency for land, infrastructure, and transportation R&D, paves the way for technological advancement in the field and offers a better direction. To go far, we must go together. Kaya, Korea Agency for Infrastructure Technology Advancement, plans R&D projects through research and analysis on demands for promising technology. Furthermore, we evaluate and manage ongoing projects in order to successfully deliver new technology. We support commercialization through valuation of land, infrastructure and transportation technology, technology transfer, and financial support. We provide solutions for wide adoption and application of new technology through evaluation and certification, in order to address social issues through technological development, and to bolster economic growth through industrial advancement. Kaya supports numerous R&D projects that are tied to overall government functions, not to mention lives of our citizens. To this end, Kaya supports and brings together experts, researchers, private businesses, and relevant agencies in various fields, and also builds social consensus and drives cooperation. Thus, Kaya embodies a huge system rather than a single institution, a system that drives change and growth of land, infrastructure, and transportation in South Korea. As an industrial platform and arena of innovation for land, infrastructure, and transportation R&D, Kaya continues to support business growth and remains a companion of our citizens. Today's direction determines where you arrive tomorrow. Changes in people's perspective, patterns in daily life, form of culture, and the natural environment. Kaya recognizes trends in the changing world and was always in the lead. World-class technology that boosts national competitiveness as an advantage in the future market. A safe and pleasant living environment, built on technology and prepared for accidents, disasters, and climate change, and revitalizing the economy by nurturing hidden champions and achieving technological independence. Kaya continues to discover and promote new R&D projects for a more pleasant and safer land and infrastructure, and a more reliable and convenient means of transportation. Kaya harnesses advanced human-friendly technologies that promote the value of life to shape a better future. You are the starting point of Kaya's path. The path leads to changes in the world and delivers happiness. Anyone can enjoy a convenient and safe bus ride, thanks to unseen efforts of Kaya to connect businesses, researchers, and users with one another, discover world-class advanced technology, implement newly developed systems, and modify the institutional framework. Thus, Kaya is on a path that links technology to industry, improves our daily lives, and realizes the future we envision. Along this path, we innovate and nurture land, infrastructure, and transportation technology, in addition to generating future drivers of growth. As a partner in resolving people's everyday problems, and a platform for innovative growth of the land, infrastructure, and transportation sector, Kaya will pave the way for you.
This land, full of vitality, dreamt of a broader world. We dreamt of a better future for Korea and the world. aspirations focused on one goal, the establishment of an international city. In 2003, this led to the creation of Incheon's IFES, a splendid miracle built on the mudflats. IFES became increasingly known worldwide for exceptional systems and people, and it expanded on an unprecedented scale, keeping up with the changing times with unrivaled competitiveness. Accumulating knowledge and information, companies and businesses and people and culture come together as one with foresight and exalted values. The future is here already at IFES, a global business frontier that sets the standard. Tomorrow starts here, IFES.
과감한 상상력으로 도시의 생명력을 극대화하는 것, 이것이 도시 공간이 갖는 매력이고 아이페스가 바로 그런 공간 같습니다. 뛰어난 입지 선정, 기획력과 투자로 새로운 공간을 창출해왔죠. 그래서 아마도 동부가 허브시티로 성장할 거라고 믿고 지금도 계속 확장되고 있습니다.
Ideas were shared far and wide and were crystallized. An ideal high-tech Northeast Asian knowledge and service center. IFES is a global economic platform within 3 hours of 147 major cities.
아이페즈는 상식을 파괴한 도시 같아요. 잘 짜여져 있는 공간에 도시를 설계하고 계획하는 것이 아니라 없는 땅을 메워서 도시를 만들었고 또 지금도 점점 계속 도시가 늘어나기도 하고 모양이 바뀌기도 하고 그 융통성과 유동성을 갖고 있는 도시인데요. 그러다 보니 빠르게 변화하는 상황에 잘 맞추어서 그 도시가 나아갈 방향들을 잘 대응할 수 있는 게 이 도시의 장점 같습니다.
Sprawling over Songdo, Yeongjong, and Cheongna, IFES is creating new urban space for the times. Songdo International City is a base for Korea's high-tech knowledge industry, home to IT, IT research, and global education institutes. Yeongjong International City is rapidly becoming a center of aviation, logistics, tourism, and leisure around Incheon International Airport. Cheongna International City is a center of finance, distribution, healthcare, and high-tech. IFES is changing the urban paradigm while building infrastructure for business and pleasant residential space for work-life balance.
앞으로 아이페즈가 스마트시티로 발전하는데 여러 가지 좋은 가능성들을 갖고 있는 것 같아요. 우선
We will get started the last session, Smart Mobility, from now. I will introduce the session moderator, Professor Sang-ho Chu from Hongik University. He is professor of the Department of Urban Design and Planning, Hongik University. He served as a director and research fellow of the Korean Transport Database Center at Korean Transport Institute, and also served as a Telecommunications and Travel Behavior Committee member of Transportation Research Board. Then, I will ask Professor Sang-ho Chu to proceed with this mobility session right now. Thank you. We will get...
Good evening, everyone. Good morning, presenters and audience in the UK. My name is Sang-ho Chu. I will be moderating the Smart Mobility session, which is a major component in smart cities. In this session, we will have a broad discussion on what smart mobility is and how it should be developed in the smart city context. This session is currently being live streamed on our YouTube channel, and we are also receiving questions in real time, so we are looking forward to hearing from you soon. Today, we have very interesting speakers and hot topics here. I'm really excited to share what they have. In advance, I would like to inform you that the first two presentations were video recorded by our staff in the UK due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation. The last two presentations will be held in real time here at the Gyeongwonje in Songdo, Korea. First, let me briefly introduce you to today's excellent speakers. We would be grateful if you could say hello on screen. Please greet each other. Say hello, please.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hello. First of all, I would like to introduce Mr. Chris Lane, the head of the Transportation Innovation, Transport West Midland, as a British speaker. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Amy Hocharo, the Director of Global Business Growth at Connected Place Catapult in London. Next, as a Korean speaker, I would like to introduce Dr. Kim Tae-hyung, a research fellow and the head of the Smart City and Transportation Division at the Korea Transport Institute. The last but not least, I would like to introduce Mr. Park Chol, a Vice President at the Hyundai Motor Group. At the end of this session, as a fabulous panelist, Professor Lee Hyang-suk will discuss about the presentation. Each presentation will take 15 to 20 minutes. As the first speaker, Mr. Chris Lane is currently the head of Transportation Innovation in West Midland. He has been working on transport for most of his life, and he delivers changes through people, process, and technology, including mobility as a service, a connected and autonomous mobility testbed, and the West Midland Future Transport Zones. You will be given a presentation on the title of The Future of Transport in the West Midland and the Role of New Modes and Emerging Technologies. Let's watch his presentation.
Hello, I'm Chris Lane. I'm Head of Transport Innovation for Transport for West Midlands. And today I'd like to talk to you about transport innovation and future mobility in the West Midlands here in the UK. The West Midlands Combined Authority, we're here to drive economic growth in the West Midlands to enable a healthier and happier, better connected, more prosperous community. We're right at the heart of the country. We're within 90% of all of the ports within 4 hours. We're seeing a massive contribution to the UK's gross value added. We're the UK's first 5G testbed, and we have seen significant growth here in the West Midlands. But we need to change the behaviour. You'll see from these diagrams that the diagram on the left shows that most people are travelling in the West Midlands by single occupancy car. And on the right, whilst we have the largest urban bus network in Europe, it's significantly less than the car network. 63% of people are still travelling by car. Even if we put roadworks in their way, add an extra hour to their journey, we've found from our studies and research that people will still do the same thing. So we really need to make a difference. We really need to look at how we change people's behaviour. Everyone has been impacted by COVID-19 across the world, and here in the UK you can see from the graph that we've seen a significant decline both in public transport and in private transport use. The public now are receiving very different messages, from get out of your car to get onto the bus, to use your own private car, keep yourself isolated and separate. And this is having an impact on our industries, automotive, aerospace, construction, all of them seen short-term suffer. But we think the facts are critical. We've created here in the West Midlands a COVID dashboard. It shows you not only the prevalence of the virus itself across our different areas, but also we've linked it to the transport, so we understand how it's impacting the transport and how the transport can contribute and support what's happening within our environment and what's happening to us as a region. There's good and bad. We've seen that trip making is down, public transport is down, which is causing financial and operational and a commercial crisis, and our car use is as low as it has been since the 1950s. But actually people are working from home. They're travelling actively more. Car use is up, and in the long term that might be a positive benefit for manufacturing. And the good side is we're seeing a cleaner environment. It's quieter, less polluted. People are more active, travelling and walking on bicycles. But the bad side is we're seeing that our deprived communities are ones that really bear the brunt of this. They are the ones that are affected economically. They've got reduced access to the places they need to get to the jobs. And our response in the short term has been to get the key essential medical workers to the hospitals and to the surgeries, the doctors and the nurses. And so we've reworked and reformed our transport system to do this. And as we are now seeing it starting to reopen, we're again having to think about how can we keep the R factor, the rate of infection down. And for that we need to manage transport very differently. So transport will help us with economic recovery. People need it for access, but also investment can be a great catalyst for growth. Here in the West Midlands we've developed future transport zones. Applying technology can be a real factor in supporting that economic recovery and growth. We have a wide mobility portfolio where we see a number of verticals that brought together create a synergy of mobility within the West Midlands. We're doing work on ultra-low emission vehicles. We are the UK's first 5G testbed. We have a connected and automated mobility testbed called Midlands Future Mobility. We have our future transport zones. We've created a commercial data exchange platform called Convex, and many others, and all these together contribute to growth through industrial partnerships, research skills, and a key sector, our automotive sector, we're expecting significant growth through these investments. We want to change our transport from being a physical thing to a digital thing. At the moment, if I was a connected autonomous or automated car, I would need to sense the environment to know what to do, where to park, how fast I should be driving, where I should give way. But we want that information digitised, so you're part of a digital environment. We want to create digital twins, so these new technologies and these new services can access new forms of information. We see Convex, our commercial data exchange platform, being key and central to this, a place where not only autonomous vehicle providers can post their data, they can also commercialise it and receive a return. And all of this data is to be exploited. We're looking at resilience, we're looking at a network that keeps moving. We want to know what the problems are and how to respond. But what we really want to know is how to respond before the problem happens. What are those interventions that we can take that will really make a difference? I've talked already about the connected and automated mobility lab. We've had the great opportunity of running autonomous vehicle trials on the city roads here in the West Midlands. You'll see from the pictures at the top, the first one is a junction that has no road markings, and we thought it would be a good idea to drive an autonomous car on its own through that junction, negotiating with cyclists, with buses, with pedestrians. And at the bottom, we all walk around with our mobile phones, not really paying attention to the environment. And this individual crossing the road here didn't know that the car stopped at the zebra crossing for him was driving itself, a fully automated car. And this has been a springboard to create our mobility lab, covering a large area of the West Midlands. It covers motorways, city roads, rural roads, and complex junctions and complex situations. It has a real mix of technology available on it, from cameras to weather stations and environmental sensing, to roadside units, to 5G communications, and all of it available as a point cloud digital twin. And our future transport showcases are really important to us. You'll see the picture here of Birmingham Airport, one of the partners we're working with. And what these showcases are all about is looking at our existing transport provision. How can we improve what we've already got? How can we be better at what we're already doing? But then adding to that new forms of travel, lift sharing, car clubs, demand responsive transit. And at the moment, now currently live in the West Midlands, e-scooters, electromobility. We realise that it's really important to provide that information through an easy to use interface. Most of us use apps these days. And we're building that on the top of our very successful Swift smart card, which is being used for public transport. And underpinning all of that are experience amplifiers, which I'll talk about in a moment. All of those go together with incentives. Maybe with the lift share, you can park your vehicle outside your office, and of course disincentives. How do we discourage you to make those trips that are unhelpful? Future transport, we think, is an emotional experience as well as a physical one. And there are a number of experience amplifiers, and this has changed actually with the COVID situation. Maybe previously what was important to you was to be entertained, to be productive, to socialise with others. Maybe the important thing now is to be safe, to be in control, to know when you're reaching your destination. So we feel that these are important factors that we build into the transport services that we try. You'll see the picture in the corner here of Warwick University. Warwick are a growing university, and they are reaching the point where they need to get more people to that university in sustainable ways, and we're working with them and future transport zones to enable that to happen. I've said that we're the West Midlands 5G testbed and the testbed for the UK, and it's not just for transport. We're looking at industry and logistics, life science, medical and emergency services, and of course mobility. We've already run a number of small-scale trials. How do we get people to parking spaces using 5G? We're running a number of competitions where we're encouraging companies to create and develop new products and services that solve some of the West Midlands transport problems, and we're currently on our second round of funding for that competition. We're also creating a road sensor network that we're overlaying 5G to use, so it gives us that picture to aid us with the resilience that we've already talked about. And it's not just about the travel itself, it's about how you travel, and alternative fuels are really key as we try to protect our environment. There's a number of really exciting initiatives here in the West Midlands. Park and charge. How can we allow you to charge your vehicle actually from broadband cabinets? Buses, we have a number of electric buses. How can we get them charging on the route so they can stay in service? What about the car charging itself on the road itself? And we've had a very successful trial of hydrogen trains here in the West Midlands, right next to one of our big energy parks. We see battery as really important, and you'll see here in the picture our battery industrialisation centre. But all of this is underpinned with our electric vehicle strategy, where we've looked ahead to 2040 and understood the type of charging needs we'll need, how the population will develop, how things will grow, just to make sure we've got the right supply, right demand and right equipment to meet us for the future. So really return back to our future mobility portfolio. We have a number of areas that we are looking at very clever initiatives in, but together it creates a synergy, it creates a great place to come and test and try and work with new products and services and really push the boundaries of future mobility. We have some big events coming up that we're going to use this for. Coventry, one of our major cities, will be the UK City of Culture in 2021. They'll be dealing with a number of visitors, looking at a number of events. We are looking forward to the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games, right across the West Midlands but centred on Birmingham. Again, a large number of visitors that we want to move around smoothly and efficiently. We are one of the shortlisted bidders for the ITS World Congress in 2024. So thank you very much for your attention. We hope you enjoyed this little run through what we're doing here in the West Midlands.
Thank you, Mr. Chris Lane. He well explained how transportation innovation and future mobility, such as alternative fuel, connected and automated vehicles, 5G transport initiatives, and future transport zones are very helpful for economic recovery from the COVID-19 in the Westland. Midlands. The next presentation will be delivered by Dr. Amy Hochado, the Director of Global Business Growth in Connected Place Catapult in London. She is a global city expert who deals with urban issues and work with regional leaders, entrepreneurs, cities, and central governments around the world, including India, Malaysia, and the European Union. The title of the presentation is The Future of Mobility for Smart Resilient Cities in a COVID World. Let's watch her presentation, please.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Amy Hochado, and I'm the Director of the Global Program at Connected Places Catapult. The Catapult is part of the UK government. We work with innovators both in the UK and around the world to create better connections between places, urban spaces, mobility, and the built environment. And in particular, we focus on new levels of physical, digital, and social connectedness. I'll tell you a little bit more about the Catapult. I'll also tell you about how we think about cities and our approach to cities. And then I'll give you some examples of our work and how I think we might be able to work with UK and South Korean entrepreneurs together on projects in Korean cities. So this slide will give you a little bit of our footprint, our global footprint, and where we run projects. And you can see that our scope and scale of our work is quite broad. We have a focus on Asia, Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific, as well as the Middle East, Brazil, and a very large project that we're doing in East Africa and South Africa. We're almost sector agnostic. Any issues that affect the urban environment, we'll work on projects that help solve those city solutions and those city challenges. So it might be around mobility challenges that a city's having, data challenges, governance, thinking about the future of things, future of mobility, future of public spaces. So we cross a lot of different sectors, but our goal is how can we leverage technology and innovation to solve city solutions? So the way that we think about cities is as layers. So what this slide shows you is that a digital layer forms the foundation of the city, and this is ever more apparent when we talk about the world during COVID. We have found that having a digital foundation is critical to cities being successful both now and moving ahead in the future. So there's a digital foundation to the city, but then we think about the issues of the city in layers like water, energy, safety, transport. We no longer think of them in verticals. These have to all be integrated with a level of data so that they all impact each other and that they can all work together and that we can address solutions in a more holistic approach across the city. It's no longer feasible to separate these issues across a city, such as mobility and the built environment. They have to be thought of as a total. And then you move up to when you see the physical part of the city and the geography of the city and how you can best leverage that for the people that are going to use it. And that's why on this slide, you see our approach to cities is looking at the user-centered design. Who's in this city? Who will be using this city? For what purposes? Are they academics? Are they business people? Are they visitors? Is it a high tourism city? And in that respect, then you can tailor the needs of the city to the people that live there. So we never start with a technology-focused approach. We start with a user-centered design approach and then determine what type of technology and innovation can facilitate that solution. So when we think about mobility in particular, it's an enterprise systems engineering approach. So we leverage both our holistic thinking about cities, but we also leverage our own technical expertise in this sector. And we think about the innovative design, we understand regulations, we think about safety, we validate methodologies, all in understanding the future of mobility in a location. And you can see some of our areas of expertise. I won't read through all of them, but to give you a sense of we're looking at mobility around decarbonization, the future of flight, last mile logistics, data science, systems engineering, transport modeling. So we have quite a wide breadth of expertise, but we always start with that user-centered design approach. What is the challenge that we're looking to solve, and then what type of technical expertise can we bring into that to solve the challenge? So I will spend just a couple of minutes talking about COVID. It's the elephant in the room, and we can't ignore it. This has impacted cities in several ways. Cities all around the world are facing very, very similar issues, and they've had some very similar responses. We've seen that agile cities have done better. Cities that have always been open to trialing new technology and innovations, to having test beds, to working with innovators and entrepreneurs, have been able to shift quickly into using new types of applications to look at city efficiency, keeping systems up and running. Agile cities have fared better during COVID. Digital cities, this is a foregone conclusion. The more that a city had invested in its digital infrastructure, the better it's done during this crisis. The ability to run the city, monitor the city, and to continue city services has been vital, and it hasn't been able to happen unless cities have had a digital backbone. So those that have had a digital backbone are putting more funding and budget and staff into shoring that up. Cities that haven't had a digital backbone are quickly trying to accelerate their activity around getting that in place, because it's apparent now that without a digital backbone, cities will not be successful. And then the final lesson that I think we've learned, well, not the final, there'll be many lessons learned in COVID, but one of the big lessons that I think a lot of us have been thinking about is the shift to net zero cities. And we really think about this one as an opportunity. We know that now, given this crisis, given the change in our working habits, how we work, how we move, how we live, it presents an opportune time to really seriously address our carbon emissions and work towards net zero cities. And I think that that's an opportunity as well that both of our countries can work on together. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about something that we call the city typologies. This is the way that we analyze cities all over the world. So we have a database right now of over 500 cities. It's large and small, all geographically spread around the world. And we have this database as a very unique asset that doesn't exist elsewhere. It's not your typical market analysis, but it's an innovation approach to cities. So we can understand how cities are faring on the innovation front, the technology front, commercializing new technologies, the academic ecosystem, all the way through to the corporate ecosystem. And we can understand if cities are moving in a positive way on that journey, and what their success is likely to be, both domestically, but also in working with foreign companies and businesses to be successful moving forward. And so this is how we think about global cities. We look at our city typology to understand where cities are in their journey, and then we can come up with projects and activities that we can do together to improve those cities' journey towards future of mobility or future of better health and well-being for the citizens in that city. So the dashboard has 500 cities. There are 65 unique indicators that exist in this, and there's over 100,000 data points that exist in this database, and the database is updated every 6 months. And the data is drawn from two sources. One is a quantitative location, so credible indices that are out there and already exist, like OECD data, for example. But it's also qualitative, and this is what makes it unique. Where there are gaps, we've actually had eager young researchers that have been scouring the internet or literally on the phone talking with city leaders to find out what type of city budget are you putting towards innovation and technology? What type of ecosystem do you have? How do you support young entrepreneurs in your city? So that's what makes this unique. This type of data all together in one place in this format doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, but it gives us all an edge on where we can do business better. So The main three areas that we look at for this city typology are the city's systems and assets, so the physical, tangible hardware that's in a city, the roads, the Wi-Fi fiber that's in the ground, whatever it might be, those physical assets, the public transport backbone, and we understand, are those hard systems and assets good enough to build on to move forward? Second, we look at the ecosystem and the enterprise dynamics. Is there scope for supporting a good entrepreneurial, dynamic, interactive system? Is the ecosystem mature? Is there potential for investment and growth? Is there a pool of talent in that city that's going to help propel them on this journey? And then third, we look at the strategic capacity and ambition, and this is really more about the governance factors. Budget, leadership, vision, and the way that a city is run, as well as looking at those areas of transport, innovation, and net zero, and how does the leadership of those cities approach issues like that. So it's those three elements that we think need to be looked at together to understand how well a city can do or is doing on their innovation journey. And we have some data from South Korean cities. And so what you're seeing here is more of a red light, green light data analysis of the cities. But I would caution you to say that red and green don't necessarily mean good or bad. Having a database like this with 500 cities is all about the question you want to ask. So are you thinking about leveling up cities outside of Seoul? Are you thinking about what cities would do best if they were to house a data center, perhaps? And so you look at the indicators to decide, because it might not have a backbone for public transport, doesn't mean that it's not a good location for a data center, perhaps. So it's how you approach the data in the city typologies that's the important question. So we can see in this spread of cities in South Korea that there are areas such as the city systems and assets. And we know we're not going to bring better trains, physical trains and physical backbone to Korea. Those are the types of direct investment we'd like Koreans to bring to the UK. But what we do well in the UK and what we can bring to Korea are some of the other areas that you might want to improve on in your city systems. Citizen-centric design, looking at the convening of different ecosystems, deploying test beds across the city that bring different stakeholders together, and looking at roadmaps for the future of those cities that are a holistic approach to urban development. So when you look at the data, it's important to understand what question you're asking and look at the opportunities that it presents for what we might want to do together. And the data gets really granular. So if you look at this, and I could go across to the ecosystem and enterprise dynamics section of the data, and I hover here over Daejeon, and I look at the labor force specialization, and we can see that in that city, we could do more with diversification of the urban tech sector. Okay, now that presents an opportunity. So you might want to say, let's convene an ecosystem of tech entrepreneurs in that city to help catalyze more activity, catalyze economic activity in that city. That's the type of granular information that this type of database provides. There's one other issue that I think is quite important. And on this next slide, you can see where we can compare cities to each other. Busan, Daegu, for example, and look at the different indicators and see how they're pairing up together. The reason this is important is that no city should go on this journey individually. If we're looking at cities across a region, cities should be paired up together. So many cities are facing the same issues, and especially when it comes to thinking about use of innovation and technology for efficiency, it is not very efficient to embark on this journey one city at a time. You have to have a view of all of the cities in the region, where they are in their journey, how they can best be paired together, where they might learn from where someone has already gone on a journey for the future of mobility, avoid those mistakes, capitalize on the successes. And so it's important that you think about pairing up cities. And this goes far beyond the traditional idea of twinning cities. This is really about finding innovation partners that can help grow businesses and ecosystems. And it's not just about pairing up the cities in a particular country like South Korea, but it's also pairing up with cities all around the world. There are cities across the Middle East that might be at the exact same point in their journey as Busan. There are cities in the UK that would want to pair up with Sejong and find out what areas we're both struggling with, what areas we can both capitalize on together. This is where we see projects start to come to life, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. What physical projects, how do we make this real? Because right now, it's just a database. A database is just numbers. It's only as good as the questions you ask of it, and then what you do with that data. How do you turn that into something real? And so this is how we think about bringing the best of British expertise together with the best of South Korean expertise. We look at connecting up the market, so really creating some high-value engagement, pairing up your companies with our companies, especially when it comes to things like tech hubs or incubators or accelerators. We can pair those up in particular and help entrepreneurs grow. We look at sparking lots of new opportunities. So when I talked about things like test beds, this is how we spark new opportunities and we create innovations that are really going to drive our economy. And then acceleration of commercializing these assets. So we really need to think of that whole spectrum from deep academic knowledge that the UK really does excel at, all the way through to commercializing an idea, and whether that's a piece of technology or innovation, again, where South Korea does really well. So how do we create that spectrum together from an academic idea all the way up through commercialization where we can have real impact on the economy? So it's really about that journey that all of the businesses go on and that their cities go on together. And this slide talks about something we call the technology readiness level. So it's meant to denote the journey from that academia all the way through supply chain, but it gives a sense of the types of businesses that we're working with on either side of this spectrum to give you a sense of where do we need to intervene in the middle to remove barriers to this process, de-risk investment, catalyze economic activity. And that's the type of projects that the Catapult runs. So just a sense of some very specific projects that we're currently running. We are part of the UK government. We also run projects on behalf of the UK government and the Department for Transportation, for example. So we're involved in the future of flight, unmanned systems, drone pathfinder program, a lot of traffic visualization and modeling, HS2, which is our high-speed mobility system. So we really are deeply involved in some of these areas of the future of mobility across multiple sectors for our own government in the UK. But we also do this all around the world, because as much as we want businesses to come to the UK and pair up with our businesses, we take our businesses abroad and work with entrepreneurs all around the world to open up new markets, catalyze new opportunities. So I'll give you this example around Sharjah. Sharjah is an emirate in the United Arab Emirates. And whilst this isn't necessarily a mobility project, I think it gives you the sense of the types of projects we run, the model that we use, and that holistic approach, kind of a non-sectoral approach to the city that then leads to the types of interventions that you need to run. So this project, Sharjah, for those that don't know, is directly next to Dubai. And that's part of its problem. When you're next to Dubai, when you're next to a city that's seen as flashy and smart and future-focused, it's difficult to stand out in that region. And so Sharjah had a question. They have world-class academic institutions. They have a really good digital foundation. They have things like the Sharjah Research and Technology Park to drive that commercialization activity, but they didn't know how to stand out. What makes Sharjah unique? So I'll give you an example of one of our large-scale projects that we've run in the Emirate of Sharjah. Sharjah, which is right next to Dubai, which is also a little bit part of its problem. We know that Dubai excels at innovation and technology, Sharjah wanted to understand how they can stand out in that region when they also have a very good innovation foundation, including academic expertise. So we ran a project over the course of about a year. It was sponsored by the ruler of Sharjah himself, where we did 3 things. And I show you this because it's a good model for how we run projects all over the world. First, we start with that market analysis and understanding what do the spread of cities look like in a region. So we use that city typologies, but we go very deep into it to understand the assets and the challenges that a place like Sharjah might have. And then based on that research, we'll put together pairings of UK and Sharjah entrepreneurs to address those challenges. Now, those entrepreneurs physically deploy their solutions across the city, and I think that's a really critical part. People need to be able to see innovation. They need to be able to interact with innovation to make it real. So we always undertake an exercise of deploying our technologies and innovation so that we can understand the impact that they'll have in a city. And then finally, we undertake a sustainability component. This isn't a one-off project. We're running this project to catalyze an economy or an ecosystem. So what we need to do then is have 2 governments talk to each other, the UK government and in this case the Sharjah government, to determine how they want to partner going forward. And so they undertake bilateral business engagement talks to come to an agreement. After this project ends, how do we continue this type of business engagement? So that's really the model that we follow. I'll give you a couple of quick mobility examples around this model, and then I'll leave it there because I know we have a panel and we'll get lots of questions. So the first example is in Bengaluru in India, in the city of Bangalore. And this is twofold, and you can see how this is a holistic approach to the city. India is undergoing a massive transportation of its entire bus system to move towards electric vehicles. Now that's not something you can simply turn a switch and make happen. So we're running a test bed where we are pairing up UK entrepreneurs with Indian entrepreneurs in the city of Bangalore to test some ways that we can best make this transition, but also impact air quality, because we know that that's a significant reason for transitioning to electric vehicles, to improve air quality. So right now, those entrepreneurs are working together. We have streets that are shut down in Bangalore where we're deploying air quality sensors, where we're testing different charging points, but also monitoring the impact on the city. Does it help improve very specific areas of the city, like routes to school where children are walking? And so it's those types of programs that we can put together to both impact mobility, but the overall well-being of the city. And you can see the 2 work streams that we have in Bangalore, the air quality work stream and the electric vehicle work stream. So you get the sense of the holistic approach. And you could read through this. We'll be sharing all of the slides, but we talk about the different types of impact that we're looking for across an entire city. Let me tell you about another example, mobility as a service in the Klang Valley in Malaysia. Now, when you look at a place like KL, Kuala Lumpur, there's very good backbone for public transportation. What the government of Malaysia is interested in is how do we improve public transportation uptake around the city center as we start to migrate out to suburbs or more rural regions. How can we help people increase their usage of public transportation? This is where mobility as a service comes into play, and you understand from work that has been done in Seoul, where you have mobility as a service, that this is about simplifying the journey, having one point of payment for lots of different choices around your journey, improving the user experience, having real-time updates. All of those different components create mobility as a service. So what we're doing right now in the Klang Valley is undertaking that research component. We're taking an assessment of everything they have. We're looking at our city typologies to understand what's happening in different cities, where are cities in their journey, what have they already completed, and then we put together a roadmap for this is where the cities are, this is where cities might be similar to each other, and this is where we need to get to. And then these are the types of services that you need to begin to integrate to have that mobility as a service fully integrated system at the end of that journey. And I think I'll leave it there for now, but I'll just summarize by saying, Connected Places Catapult really looks at this whole place approach. You've heard me say that multiple times. You can't separate the verticals of a city any longer. We also have a very strong emphasis on convening the ecosystem. Without convening the stakeholders, if you continue to work in silos, we're not going to advance the journey towards the future of mobility or the future of connected places. We also have to focus on citizen-centric innovation. At the Catapult, we have a bit of a motto that comes from a rather eccentric architect named Cedric Price, who said, "Technology is the answer, but what was the question?" And this is something we always have to keep in mind. What is the question that we're trying to ask, the challenge that we're trying to solve, and who's going to benefit from that before we start to introduce any type of technology? It's also about pairing up entrepreneurs. We know that we're better together. We know that both of our economies will be better together. So we want to run projects that will pair up both UK and South Korean entrepreneurs. And finally, it's about deploying those test beds and solutions at the city level, making it tangible and realistic for people to see and interact with innovation and to understand how it can improve their well-being and the city services that they depend on in their urban areas. So I think that we'll have a very exciting panel coming up. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm looking forward to all of your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Amy Hopchal. She well introduced the strategic integrated system approaches, including user-centered design approaches that cities should consider for future mobility, and gave us good successful examples for adopting air quality, electric vehicle innovations, and mobility as a service. As the third speaker, we would like to invite Dr. Kim Tae-hyung. He is currently a research fellow and the head of the Smart City and Transport Division at the Korea Transport Institute. In particular, he is an expert in ITS, Intelligent Transportation System. The title of his presentation is Mobility Revolution, ITS to Smart Mobility in Korea. Please give us a great presentation. The floor is all yours.
Thanks for your warm introduction, Professor Chu. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen in UK, and all the people, good evening in Korea. I'm pleased to be here, and it is my great honor to have a chance to talk about the mobility revolution, more specifically on ITS to smart mobility in Korea. Here is the content of my presentation. First of all, I'm going to explain how ITS has been introduced to Korea and its effect and benefit in Korea. And then I want to share some lessons from the experience of Korea ITS and propose directions for future transport systems. And finally, introduce our effort moving forward to mobility revolution in Korea. The many cities in Korea have been experiencing tremendous increase in the number of vehicles and rapid growth of urbanization over several decades. As a result, those have caused severe traffic congestion, increased road accident, air pollution, and other transport problems. So there may be various policies and strategies to resolve those problems. We have tried many different ways to resolve those transportation problems, such as construction of new roadways and some measures to reduce traffic demand and provide alternative transport mode, and finally realize that one of feasible solution is to introduce ITS. The ITS operation from the end of 1990 in Korea has achieved various effect and benefit in Korea. For example, it has increased the number of public transportation passengers travel speed by 15 to 20%, and citizens' satisfaction of using ITS services. It also has decreased the number of fatal accidents and reduced greenhouse gas and oil consumption by decreasing traffic congestion and idling and so on. However, we have learned some lessons from the experience of Korea ITS for 20 years, and realized that we need to proceed to next step beyond the conventional ITS. Once the ITS was introduced in Korea, it has achieved various positive effect and benefit, as I mentioned before. But as you can see in this slide, we spent more than 2.3 billion US dollars for 10 years, from 2005 to 2015, and still need to spend additional 1.2 billion US dollars up to 2020. However, we only installed IT systems about 16% of total road lengths as of 2015, maybe 20% until now. It means that we still have to spend huge amount of money for the deployment of the conventional IT systems to cover major roadways in Korea, and even more for maintenance costs of those systems in the near future. Even though continuous ITS investment, we still have faced many transport challenges. Traffic conditions, especially during the peak hours, are getting worse, and higher traffic fatalities and injuries are one of the key issues for traffic safety in Korea. Vehicle emissions have caused severe air pollution and even climate changes. So we still have inconvenient public transportation system, especially for vulnerable people. So Korean government initiated a public-private cooperation on traffic information to secure ITS on equipped roadway by using private services such as T-Map or Kakao Map or Google navigation systems. So it enabled us to save budget for additional ITS deployment and concentrate on ITS services for safety issues. And also, in an era of fourth industrial revolution, we have tried continuous effort to adopt the advanced ICT technologies such as Internet of Things, cloud computing, and big data analytics, and mobile networks and AI to move the conventional IT systems into the next generation of transport systems and services. So what could be a direction for future transport systems? And what kind of strategies and solutions could be applied? So I believe that one of the best solutions is the integration of transport and ICT-based infrastructure, which is ICT-enabled transport systems that is smart mobility. So smart mobility systems could be deployed as more cost-effective, simpler, easier ways of installation, operation, and maintenance. And services could be provided to people as greener, smarter, safer, and more inclusive than the conventional transport systems. The smart mobility could be classified as 4 features: connected and autonomous, electric, shared and flexible, and integrated mobility. So from this slide, I'm going to briefly introduce our effort to achieve the smart mobility in Korea that we have done or in progress right now. This is the CITES, which is the new paradigm for next generation ITS, focusing on safety, mobility, and sustainability by applying vehicle-to-vehicle, vehicle-to-infrastructure, and vehicle-to-pedestrian communications. The CITS pilot project has been done successfully on expressway, national highway, and urban roadways in Daejeon and Sejong City for 3 years to verify CITS core technologies and services and prepare full-scale deployment. It is now expanded to other cities such as Seoul, Gwangju, and Jeju Island. This is the automated shuttle service that could be one of the killer services in smart city. So many countries and cities have developed automated shuttle services such as Ijimal and Nabuya, and conducted pilot tests and demonstrations on roadways. We also have started to develop an automated shuttle called as Zero Shuttle since 2016, and it has been under field test for stabilization and localization. In addition, recently, the National R&D project to develop automated bus for public services has been started since 2018 and has been doing pilot tests on real roadway. And also, a national smart city pilot project has been started in Sejong 5-1 district, and one of the core services is to implement automated shuttle service for 6 to 12 passengers based on circular operation in fixed route and on-demand operation. To improve first and last mile mobility and mitigate traffic congestion caused by the vehicle ownership and motorization, we have applied personal mobility and car sharing service, and they are widespread in Korea right now. So we are planning to adopt or develop various types of personal mobility as seen in this slide to satisfy people's needs, especially for people who are not familiar with running kickboard type and adverse weather conditions and so on. And the free-floating basis car sharing services will be tested and operated in the National Smart City Pilot Project. Because currently in Korea, we are running the car sharing services on a basis of a station or designated places. This is a demand responsive transit service called as a DRT, which can be used by real-time or pre-reservation via internet or smartphone. This service has been operated as a bus type to provide the optimal route and stops depending on demand of passengers who have same departure times, origin and destinations. It will be expanded to cover other transport modes such as shuttle or taxi type in the near future. This is the integrated mobility service that is very similar to mobility as a service MaaS in Europe. This service enables people to make a search, reservation, and payment services for transportation through a single smartphone application. It provides improved convenience of using public transportation and improving mobility by connecting to first mile and last mile. Actually, this service was conducted as a pilot in Korea during 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games, but unfortunately it was not quite successful at that time since there were some limitations in developing mobility platform and connecting and integrating all the traffic, all the mobility data from the public and private side. So therefore, since 2018, we have started a national R&D project to develop the various technologies, including a mobility platform for providing integrated mobility service, and the field demonstration is in progress to Daegu Metropolitan City for verification and evaluation of the service. Currently in Korea, traffic signal control is operating based on the time of day, TOD basis, but AI-based actuated control will be tested soon in the National Smart City Pilot Project. And the smart pedestrian crossing system, which has several functions of sensing and guiding pedestrians, warning the vehicles, and indicating signals and information on surface, has been implemented in several cities in Korea and will be expanded to nationwide to improve pedestrian safety. This is a smart parking service in which we can make a reservation for parking space and automated parking payment through a single smartphone prior to arriving at your destination. In 2018, the National Smart City Pilot Project was initiated by Korean government, and 2 candidate sites were selected for the pilot project, the Sejong 5-1 district and the Busan Eco Delta district. Currently, they are on a stage of establishing master plan and detailed design. As you can see in this slide, there are 8 different smart mobility services in a pilot project, such as AI-based smart signal, mobility as a service, automated shuttle, and so on. They will be implemented and tested and provided to citizens living in those districts around May of 2023 after localization and stabilization. This is it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. He first introduced IT strategies to resolve transportation problems, and then gave us some good examples of smart mobility services applied in Korea. For example, CITS, the automated shuttle and demand responsive transit, and integrated mobility services. Let's move on. The last but not least presenter, we would like to invite Mr. Park Chol. He is Vice President of the Open Innovation Strategy Group in the Hyundai Motor Company. Before joining the company, he worked at Samsung Electronics as well as SK Telecom. He is a real expert in smart mobility. He will present Smart City and Smart Mobility. Please.
Thank you. Good evening and good afternoon to UK. Today, I'd like to talk about Smart City and the smart mobility. Let me start with the word smart first. So we are so used to this term smart these days, and it is hardly possible to say things without this word smart. But let's stop here and think about what it truly means and what makes smart city and what smart city different from traditional ones. So what is smart city? According to market definition, smart city is a megatrend to solve various urban problems and a way to make a human-centric society come true with latest and innovative technologies. Smart city connects various domains such as mobility, energy, safety, security, and healthcare. By connecting these domains, smart city can become sustainable, socially, economically, environmentally, and can deal with the citizens' needs more effectively. Smart city market has been growing rapidly with a CAGR of 22% from 2018 to 2025, and to become about $1,400 billion market, and it will continue to expand in the future. Especially mobility and energy are top 2 domains that lead smart city with the respective market size of about $313 billion and $245 billion in 2020. However, even though smart city market is growing so fast, we still have to ask ourselves whether the true meaning of smart city is being realized. There are various projects so-called smart city, but let's ask ourselves these questions. First, do they lack meaningful smart technology? Or haven't used smart as a mere marketing term for a service that is partial or fragmented in reality? Have we successfully predicted the size of a resident, identified their needs, and considered local characteristics and integration with the surrounding regions? As we keep asking these questions, it is hard to say that we have clear, successful model for smart city yet. Then, what is the true meaning of smart city? I believe that a true smart city has two parts. One is platform, one is evolution. First, smart city should work as a platform that connects various layers of city. Smart city should connect both physical layers and spaces and digital layers including services. With Hyundai's smart city framework and the capabilities, we have a holistic approach to deploy innovative elements in mobility, energy, environment, places, and healthcare, education, and so on. Second, smart cities should evolve continuously based on data. The shape of smart city will keep changing from its very first version as time goes by, because the smart city should become more advanced and customized to people's needs based on the data we collect as we operate the city. Let's take a look at the short video clip of the smart city we envision. Smart city has multiple layers. It has physical space on its base, like building, roads, rail, and urban infrastructure, and IT infrastructure like smart IT platform and public-private data. Above that, it has a service ecosystem that includes services such as autonomous vehicle mobility, as well as devices that connects people with these services. The most important aspect is connection among these layers. Instead of a single layer or single unit service or infrastructure, we should aim for a development of a holistic platform that connects these layers. Only with this holistic approach, we can have end-to-end completeness, openness, and scalability that can expand as city grows. What would happen if the city is developed without a holistic approach? Most of traditional city development happens sequentially, physical infrastructure first, and services second. In other words, physical spaces or infrastructure were considered as a basis of cities in the past, but this often causes imbalance between service demand and supply. There will be oversupply in the early stage of city development, but as the city grows and technologies and the market blooms, there will be an undersupply as the city cannot cover citizens' needs for public smart services. This is why we have to have end-to-end holistic smart city platform. Now, shall we move on to mobility? Mobility connects people's living, working, and moving within given spaces, and also helps smart city to evolve by combining dynamic data collected in mobility and with static data. From a recent global survey, we found that mobility is the smart city domain that is most favorably received by citizens and rolled out most quickly. Smart mobility is the top priority in every single smart city project because mobility has a great effect in improving the quality of life and vitalizing local economy by reducing commuting hours, connecting local communities and government, and also decreasing greenhouse emissions. Here is an example of smart mobility project carried by Hyundai. iMode was an on-demand shuttle service for a flexible route in Incheon, a city located in northwestern part of South Korea. We operated this iMode integrating with a last mile mobility service called iJet to connect between residential area and public transportation stops. iMode used AI algorithm to optimize routes, reflecting vehicle location data and the customer needs in real time, and improve service quality by customizing operational details with big data analysis. By learnings from last year's iMode operation, we derived and optimized, also evolved operation models for each usage patterns and local characteristics. For example, for newly developed large cities where most of demands is short distance and concentrated within a fixed area, it makes sense to apply the area division model, as you can see on the left side of the chart, where the vehicles are dispatched within the segmented zones. Whereas for a rural area or the area that needs connection from the regional transit hub, the transit hub model, as you can see on the right side of the chart, proved to be successful. Since demand is low and destinations are scattered, it makes a lot of sense to have a transit hub between the I-mode operation area and the public intercity bus stops. By applying what we learned from I-mode, it will be possible to apply optimized and evolved mobility service model from this year, starting from here in Incheon. And we can consider each city's characteristics, such as the population composition and mobility patterns and the local characteristics. Another service run by Hyundai was boat ride last year, an autonomous on-demand ride-sharing service in California. Hyundai operated a 10 fleet of Kona EV with level 4 AV technology in city of Irvine for an open public, including resident, student, and also office workers. We collected more than 100,000 data sets from over 5,000 rides with over 20,000 kilometer mileage. The data included vehicle data, customer drivers, usage pattern, and also feedback surveys on what people think and feel about autonomous vehicles and the mobility services. Based on this data, we could know what should we consider when developing autonomous mobility services and each way this service would progress in the future. During boat ride operation, we kept changing and pivoting services to meet customer needs based on the data we collected. In the early stages, we geographically divided the operational area into multiple zones and located terminals in the middle of each zone to locate either vehicle. But as we gather request data and the right data from the customer, we adjusted these zones to minimize waiting times. We also analyzed the cancellation and the acceptance rates based on the waiting time, peak time, and the peak demand area. We changed the operation hours, vehicle shift schedules, and also waiting time and the detour policies based on this analysis. As we saw from boat ride and the I-mode pilot, smart mobility should evolve continuously as the data collected, and the service portfolio in smart city should keep changing as people's needs change and the technology develops. That will be the last page of my presentation. Hyundai Motor Group's vision for smart city is multimodal mobility that integrates and connects various mobility services, not just the robotaxi and the on-demand shuttle, what I explained in the previous chart, but the other services like personal mobility and the UAM, urban air mobility. This will provide the optimized mode of the transportation for each purposes, and our mobility will alleviate traffic congestion and share the burden of traditional public transit. Also, Hyundai Motors Group will develop a transit system with a harmonized flow of human and vehicle traffic at the same time. By providing integrated multimodal mobility services, we will lead the smart mobility paradigm and maximize the citizens' benefit in a safe, convenient way. I'd like to conclude with pinpointing the importance of two things. Again, platform evolution. Hyundai Motors Group will pursue an end-to-end smart city platform that continuously evolves. With this vision and platform, we will continue our strong leadership in smart city and the smart mobility. Thank you.
Thank you for the interesting presentation, Mr. Park Cho. The Nova City is wonderful, so I wish to live there. I believe it is our future. Anyways, he will explain the smart city concept and introduce smart mobility that is continuously evolving through non-static data and learning from the pilot project iMode and Botlight. Further, he emphasized the environmental and social impact of smart mobility. So, we have heard all the presentation prepared so far. It seems to have been a good opportunity to get a grasp of the various technical aspects of creating a smart city in the UK and Korea. From now on, we will take a moment to review the panel discussion and strategies and countermeasures to respond to the post-corona era in the future. In addition, we will ask selected questions to the speakers among the questions given in real time and those previously received through our website. First of all, let's hear the general opinion of Professor Lee Hyang-soo as our panelist. She has served as an advisory committee member of the Democratic Peace and Unification Advisory Council and is a member of the Logistic Policy Committee of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. Professor Lee, please.
Hello, I'm Hyang-soo Lee from Incheon National University. I'm very pleased to be invited as a panelist for smart mobility session of this wonderful international symposium. Thanks for all your presentation, and I strongly believe all presentations were very impressive and informative. So let me discuss one by one. The first, Mr. Chris Rain introduced the future transport in West Midland and role of new modes and emerging technologies. West Midland is an exemplary case realizing a variety of smart mobility programs. The future mobility portfolio shows the various the elements like advanced technology, information, and electric energy should be considered together and harmonized to implement a successful smart mobility project in a city. I believe the comprehensive planning and the various programs running in the city provide useful information and guidelines for smart mobility system in Korea. Continuous sharing experience and progress will be very useful to proceed the current and future project. Here is my first question to Mr. Rain. It is very important to build a platform to link our information and elements to manage a smart city. So what kind of data are used in the convex commercial data platform? And what is the current role and future plan of the platform? Please answer after my discussion. COVID-19 is an important issue in mobility because trip pattern has been changing significantly. It reduces people's movements by a different way of life and changes needs for the transport system. So understanding how people are motivated and make trip decisions are very important. Transportation system should be ready to respond to the changing trip behavior in this difficult time. The transport innovation and future mobility can be helpful to increase mobility and connectivity. So I have one more question here. What could be the contribution of smart mobility as the West Midland begins its recovery from COVID-19? So, you can answer now?
Mr. Chris Lane, could you answer questions?
Thank you, and thank you for this excellent opportunity to speak with you here. I think we're starting to see a very new world. We're starting to see a post-COVID world, and I don't think any of us understand yet what that will finally look like. So to be agile, to be flexible is really important. We talked about the data platform and information and sensors, and I think they are vital for us to understand how our cities develop and grow and understand how they're changing. I think we're starting to see that people are they're changing the way they travel. Less people are commuting. There's still a lot to travel. It's more local travel, people moving to and from local locations. It's been excellent to see some of the presentations and some of the ideas, because I think a more bespoke, demand-responsive solution that can be configurable, that can be allow for social distancing, can be tailored to a user's need. I think a lot we've thought about the citizen, the individual, and making sure the service is really focused around them. And I think that's been very, very important. So I think we need technology to enable us to move in these new ways. We also think that because of this more local travel, we'll see more active travel, which can be good for everybody. So the rise of micro-mobility services and e-scooters, walking, cycling, and some of the new modes that we've seen presented today, I think we'll see much more of that. So I think we're in a very, very new world, and I don't think we have any answers, but we're hoping through the data, through the sensors, through the systems, and the programs that we have, we will be able to adapt in the West Midlands and in other places to the needs of people post-COVID-19.
And move on to the... Okay, so Professor Lee, and could you ask a question for the Dr. Amy?
Okay. Yes, Dr. Amy Hochadar introduced the process of understanding city characteristics and elements and evaluating city environment, finding problem, and suggesting solution using technology and innovation. In particular, the conceptual layer for the connected places was very impressive in her presentation. For planning future mobility, the first step is evaluating the condition of the city, like city system, asset, ecosystem, capacity, and ambition, and see what happened in the city. Therefore, data collection of the cities are very important part. Then recognize the developed plan, create a roadmap. The most important thing and interesting part is comparing city and finding similarity. I agree pairing, connecting, integrating city are important and preliminary step to define direction and integrate services to implement mobility as a service. Various project cases with the UK, Sharjah, Bangalore, and Krang Valley were very interesting and helpful to understand the city mobility concept, progress step, and anticipate the outcome when applying to the Korean cases. Data analysis for Korea cities and comparison of Busan and Daegu also provide meaningful insight. Let me ask two questions to Dr. Hochadar. So what do you think about the level of mobility in Korea? You show some data in your presentation, so please give us more information on that. And many projects on smart city and mobility have been done, right? So which project can be a good model for applying to Korean cases?
Dr. Amy, please, could you answer her questions?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for having me here. I think you're absolutely right about the importance of comparing cities. And one of the things that I try very hard to not do anymore is to take a national approach to solving solutions in any given area. We really have become a place-based globe. And place-based could mean city approach, it could mean a regional approach, it could also mean areas within cities. And so there's so much opportunity out there to really better understand the way we move around places that technology can play a role in and facilitate to make cities a better place for our citizens. And so I think for Korean cities in particular, and this goes back to a little bit about what Chris was saying as well about the opportunities here in the UK and the test beds that we have, it's really important to compare cities around the world, to have a granular understanding of the journey that they're on. And I emphasized this in my presentation, but I'll emphasize it again. It's not about saying which cities are doing well and which cities are not doing well. It's simply understanding where on a journey each city is. And so in the Korean context, and I've traveled through South Korea, and I've met with a lot of the cities there in Daegu and Busan and Incheon, and I've met with members of Kaya and stakeholders, because you really only understand a place by talking to the people that are living and working there. And I think that every single city in Korea is at a different point in its journey. And it's critical to understand if we want to implement more and more innovations to make each place improved through facilitating technology. However, I think it's also critical to understand who are your peers around the world that are on the same point in your journey. And the reason that's important is twofold. And this is kind of the situation we're also facing with COVID. It's about people and health, but it's also about economics. And so if we look at the people and the health side, we want to learn from our peers. We want to understand what other people have done, what have they tested, what's been successful, and what has not been successful. And at a purely human level, it's important that we share that and we understand that. Now, on an economic level, it's also critical that we have healthy economic cities. And so if you have an understanding of who your peers are around the world, it presents two opportunities for you. The first opportunity is business marketplace. Our entrepreneurs and your entrepreneurs are looking for where they can deploy technology, and a market is bigger than just one city. So you want to understand the entire marketplace of multiple cities where we can be sharing this type of activity and where both of our entrepreneurs and innovators can be deploying solutions. That just makes good economic sense. And so I think that between the UK and Korea, we're able to take both of those approaches. We can look at what we've learned on both of our journeys, understand both of our successes and our challenges, share that with each other in a very open way. But we also want to share our innovation and our entrepreneurship. We want Korean entrepreneurs to come to the UK and contribute to places like the West Midlands, but we also want to bring our innovators to Korea and to partner with you.
Any additional question for her? No?
Thank you for your answer. Okay, let's move on to the next presentations. Dr. Kim Tae-hyung presented Korean's smart mobility technology development and transport service trend and implementation direction for smart mobility innovation. He focused on the effect, benefit of ITS and law for the smart mobility, and also introduced a range of transport service mode like automated shuttle service, e-mobility service, and so on. Nowadays, the integrated mobility, in other words, MaaS is an acronym of mobility as a service, is an emerging issue in Korea. MaaS is a platform the service that provide an optimal route for transportation, including public and personal transportation, based on time information, and enables reservation and approval. Recently, empirical studies to build the platform has been underway in Korea, and connectivity with the energy information is discussing for efficient energy management. I believe we can't leave out the environmental problems when considering mobility. The Korean government is trying to establish a successful smart mobility model by supporting the National Smart City R&D program and various projects for technology advances. A mobility platform will combine all the related information organically to provide the optimal solution to the public in the near future. Here is my question. Are there any limitation and obstacle, political obstacle and any other, in carrying out a mass project? And what support is necessary by the government or institution in Korea?
Okay, thank you for your questions. Especially for the mass mobility as a services, there are so many countries and cities have tried to develop their mass system into the city to serve the people. And also in Korea, we have been doing the national R&D project to develop the mass service and platform. But you know, actually there are so many stakeholders in mass services, such as public and the private side, like bus and transit is a public side, and the personal mobility or the DRT and taxi. There are so many the public and their private stakeholders. So one of the big challenges is to how to integrate those two different mobility data from the public and the private sectors. So in the national R&D project, so when we develop this project and when we develop the mass services, the first step is to how to integrate, how to make a governance between, how to make a collaboration between the public and the private sectors. So for that, we have made some task force for the public and the private side, and we have been making some integrated mobility platform to collect all the mobility data from the public and the private side. So the most important thing is the governance and the collaboration between public and private side. And the other one is I think is regulation or the law, traffic law. So actually, if we wanted to implement new smart mobility services such as automated shuttle service or personal mobility services on real roadway, there are some obstacles in accomplishing the purposes. So we try to revise the current law to accommodate these new technologies on real roadway and real life. And we sometimes we need to make some deregulation to accommodate these new services to provide the peoples. So I think the most important thing is the collaboration and the data and the regulation. I think so.
Yes, the last presenter, Mr. Bakchor, introduced the representative smart mobility services and models developed by his company. He also defined the meaning of smart and smart mobility concept very clearly. The technological advanced and automotive sector an essential part of improving mobility. So AI-based bus handling system provide optimal solution, satisfying customer demand and saving operating cost. Different models that reflect various conditions may increase the feasibility of the model in the reality. Hyundai Motor Group started both right service, the autonomous on-demand taxi service in California last year. Now the service is in the initial steps. So continuous monitoring, data collection, and analysis required for commercialization. And I know truck lettering shows a successful demonstration for freight mobility a few days ago. So if yes, you have any other interesting project, please introduce to us. Very interesting. Additionally, let me ask some question. What do you think about the level of the development of smart automobile in Korea? And do you think what is the role of a private company for the smart mobility?
Well, that will be a very good and tough question, so I think. And my answer is that it will be too early to call whether our smart mobility in Korea is very advanced compared with other countries, because we are in the middle of developing this smart mobility, and I mean every hours and seconds there are coming some new technologies. But I would say that there are two aspects, like there are leading area that Korea is very developing, such as the car sharing and the taxi hailing, and also the personal mobility like scooters. But we are lagging in the area of autonomous mobility, such as the shuttles and the robotaxi, because the policies and the regulation are not ready yet. So we have to have a small pilot in certain area, what Dr. Kim explained. So we have to expand this innovative pilot in the future over the various areas throughout the Korea. And for the second question, what will be the role of the private company like Hyundai? I will tell this way. So company like us, we have to focus on developing innovative technologies like AV technology. And also we have to figure out what will be the most most proper business model that can accommodate a lot of people, not just the rich people. We have to take care of all the people, ordinary people, and also some disabled people to benefit from these smart mobility services. But at the same time, I would say that we have to collaborate with the government and the public, because smart mobility cannot be realized without the collaboration between private company and the public company. That will be my answer.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Professor Lee. Now shall we exchange questions between the presenters? Just feel free to ask each other if you have any questions. First, I would like to ask Mr. Chris Lane. Yeah, you suggested the future mobility portfolio. So I'm wondering if the public sectors, how public sector do interact with the private sector or private company to achieve the future mobility portfolio. Do you have any idea as a public sector?
Thank you. That's a very good question. If I just use our connected autonomous vehicle testbed as an example. That is a collaboration between the public sector and some large private sector organisations. As the public sector, we can bring together the real world infrastructure, the roads, the traffic lights, the junctions, but then there's other parties that can bring industry partners in and other organisations. We see partnership as absolutely vital across the whole smart city, smart transport space. We can't see that we could do that ourselves, but we do see, and it was interesting, the question on mobility as a service, that we do think there are sometimes roles to play for the public sector, such as providing a neutral host or a neutral platform on which private sector services can build. So again, that's one of the things we're looking to do with mobility as a service, is to create a platform where private sector partners and public sector partners can come and provide and make their services available. But we see that across our whole portfolio, so across electric vehicles, across 5G, across connected autonomous vehicles, mobility as a service. We see that as essential to have a public and private sector partnership. And as much as possible, we want to see economic growth, so we want those private sector companies to be successful and to be making money out of these ventures.
Do you have any subsidy to encourage the private sector's participation in smart mobility or something?
Yes, we've had a mix. Through the Connected Autonomous Vehicles Testbed and the 5G programme, the UK government have put some funding in to help start that up and help make that happen. The competitions we've run locally, we're asking for 50% private sector contribution, 50% public sector contribution to create new products and services. But our first attempt at mobility as a service, our first pilot, was completely private sector funded, and we acted as an enabler, bringing together partnerships and bringing together relationships to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Next, I would like to ask Dr. Amy Hochadol. It was very impressed, the city typology dashboard analysis. How did you construct the data for the analysis, including the Korean city you presented, for instance, your own survey, instead of collecting the secondary data from, like you said, OECD data? Do you have any own survey data for your dashboard analysis?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's an important one because there are so many different sets of data out there, sources of data, people that are doing indexes. But for us, there was a real lack in understanding the point at which cities were in their innovation journey and the components that can help either facilitate that or present a barrier to that. And so there were some sources of data that were available to us, and we scoured through all of the indexes that existed to pull the data from those. So, for example, OECD data or open data stores, local government data sources. So there are hundreds of existing data points that we simply collated to tell us the information we wanted. But that only gave us half of the answer. Especially when you're talking about the latter two components of our lens, which is what type of dynamic ecosystem do you have, and what's the leadership like in a city around innovation. That one's a little bit harder to quantify. And so that's where we work with our partners in various places to physically get that information from them. So it's one-to-one qualitative data that we gather. And it's really important to gather that on a regular basis, especially I think COVID taught us this. Emerging innovation markets will change monthly for lots of different reasons. And so we wanted to create this as much for ourselves as for everyone else. We wanted it to be the most up to date and provide us with the best picture for what we wanted to know about different cities on their journey.
Thank you. And next, I would like to ask Dr. Kim. And you have many experience of smart mobility project in Korea. So would you introduce any lessons from the smart city pilot project in order to get the smart mobility is successful from the practice point of view?
I think I already answered their questions, but if I add some the comment, actually we have been doing establishing the master plan and detailed design for the national smart city pilot project right now. In this project, the one of most important thing is how to participate the citizens and the people in the making or developing the services. So how to make some kind of the new smart mobility services to satisfy the citizens' needs and citizens' interest. So actually the national pilot project was started from the top-down approach. So the decision makers, they developed some kind of the mobility services to service for the people. So right now we are trying to get some ideas and some interesting point from the participation of the citizens and the peoples. They will be living in their cases in this district. So I think the most important part of the national pilot project is the participation of the citizens.
Lastly, I would like to ask Mr. Park, and what is the role of the local or central government to make smart mobility successful from the private sector perspective?
So that's an excellent question. So, I mean, when we think about the innovative services like autonomous vehicle and robot taxis, and even like urban air mobility, there should be some kind of element to develop these services. We have to think about the devices and the vehicle first, but there should be some supporting systems and the infrastructure, and also regulation policy and the social aspect. So let me think about the AV technology first. So we have to have a AV-enabled vehicle first, definitely, but we have to have a supporting infrastructure like high-definition maps, V2X communication, and also there should be a new infrastructure like a new road structure, traffic lights, and the signs for self-driving cars. And also the government have to introduce temporary permission to drive and run pilot project. Likewise, we have to we can reflect this kind of like a similarity to the urban air mobility. There should be a boarding facilities for the vertical air takeoff and landing, and also we have to have a transit hub. Also, we have to have a test bed to test this new technology, because in the early stage of the development, it can be dangerous. So we have to have a secured area to test this pilot. Then this learning and the result can be deployed throughout the countries and the towns and the city. So that will be the main role of the public sector. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have any other questions or presenters and panelists, please let me know. And finally, we will deal with the question received in real time. Question received in real time and online in advance were delivered to me. Among these, there was a question that stood out. For Mr. Chris Rain, there is a question for you. Even if the corona pandemic ends, it is expected that the sharing economy will be difficult as citizens' awareness of disease infection increase. Among smart mobility, I think that shared transportation uses may be intimidated, but I'm curious about how you predict the way forward for shared transportation in smart mobility in the future.
Thank you. I think that's a very good question. And I think, as we've all identified, that none of us know what new transport is going to look like. We think shared transport will be much more challenging, but we also think that the way people travel will be fundamentally different. I think we'll see a lot more people working from home, working in remote locations, working in hubs, which means the type of transport they need will be different. There will still be a need for mass transit. I think there will still be a need for shared transport. And I think this is really where bespoke, configurable, demand responsive, personalised transport is essential. And I think we're going to see quite an interesting development, I think, in the transport market as these types of vehicles are made available. Here in the West Midlands, we have an autonomous pod manufacturer. They have a 12-seater pod that's currently a 6-seater pod or a 3-seater pod because of COVID, and they've separated that pod up to allow people to socially distance and reuse that same vehicle. And I think we'll see much more of this. Again, with using technology, people who are comfortable travelling together can book seats together, and then people that aren't can book seats separately. So again, bookable, demand-responsive transport becomes really, really important. We would like to say we think the rise of active travel will be really, really key to this as well. E-scooters and other personal mobility modes. And again, we need to think about how we accommodate that without creating congestion and other problems within our cities.
Thank you for the answers to the question. There is a question for Dr. Amy of Charter. You must have done a lot of global activities, but I wonder if the role of leaders in smart city in advanced countries such as the UK and the US is different from developing countries such as India and Malaysia. And if there is a difference, in what way? Could you answer the question?
감사합니다. So I think that the question of leadership is a very interesting one. So there's two parts to my answer about this. When it comes to leadership, I think that there's no way to determine developing nations are better or those that are underdeveloped or those that are advanced. Leadership can really be mixed bag. And I'm sure Chris has encountered this as well when we talk about across the UK. You have local leaders that are very forward-thinking, very innovative, and they will find a way to make innovation happen. And then there are other leaders that are really stuck in the administration of the way cities are run sometimes, and it really does create a barrier to innovation. So I don't think that there's a geographic difference. I think leadership, we just have to look for what makes a good leader to drive innovation, and that's a very interesting question. What you do see as a difference between advanced nations and developing nations is that leaders in developing nations are much more driven by the human-centered design approach and the challenge-led approach to innovation. And by that I mean they have city challenges that might be around flood risk mitigation, and they're driven by that challenge, and then they have open innovation processes to look for solutions to that challenge. Whereas in advanced nations, sometimes we can see that leadership can be driven more by the technology than the challenge. And it's important, and I think Mr. Park said this, it's important that we make sure that our innovation is not just for those of us, those that are well off. We have to make sure that innovation is there for everyone. And in order to do that, we really have to think about the challenge-led approach and the human-centered design and look for leaders that will help us to enable that.
Okay. There is a question for Dr. Kim Tae-young. In the case of autonomous vehicles, cognitive function, judgment control function, communication function, and precise map function are required. In the case of precise maps, the existing hardware and infrastructure need to be updated. And I think that a huge budget will be required for this. Please answer how we can upgrade the existing infrastructure to implement the precise map function very well.
Okay, thank you for your questions. I think it is too technical. I'm going to try my best to answer that question. The precise map is fundamental and essential for the autonomous vehicles working well and safely on roadways. So the existing infrastructure such as traffic lane and road signage and tunnel bridge and related road facilities should be digitalized precisely like within 25 centimeters and built in a precise map properly. And also it should be regularly updated by using the mobile mapping system to maintain the quality of the map and to accommodate to the changes of the roadways. So it takes a very long time and needs to spend a huge amount of money. So therefore, recently the MOLIT, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport announced a plan to construct a precise map by 2022 up to 20,000 kilometers, including expressway and national highway and the major city roadways. And the other point I want to emphasize is that the road infrastructure and related facilities, road facilities, need to be well maintained and constructed for autonomous vehicles to sensing and running and safely on roadways. And sometimes maybe the road geometry and facilities may be redesigned or renovated for accommodating autonomous vehicles operational capabilities in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question for Mr. Park Cho. As for the so-called 5 future cars, there are self-driving cars, hydrogen cars, flying cars, shared platforms, and electric cars. Among them, flying cars have no infrastructure or regulations in place yet. What do you think is the role of a smart city to implement flying cars without hitch?
I think I already answered some of these questions, but let me add some additional point. So, I mean, but in Hyundai, we are not calling the flying cars. Rather, we use the term UAM, urban air mobility, because we have to think about the vehicle, personal air vehicle, and also the mobility services. So I use the term the UAM. So as I already mentioned, there should be some supporting infrastructure like a vertiport for in the urban city area, and also there should be some kind of the transport hub in a rural area. But most important thing can be a social consensus, because I mean some people, some residents might fear that there might be some accident through this new technology. So I think that the most easiest way to test and pilot in greenfield smart city. So we call it greenfield smart city. We can build from scratch without any resident. So we can test this kind of new air mobility, and when the technology is matured, we can implement these new services in urban areas. So the smart city should be the role of the testbed of new innovative technology.
Thank you. There is a question for Professor Lee. In smart mobility, automobile, smart city infrastructure, and communication seems very important. At which stage are we now in terms of smart city infrastructures and communication? Could you answer this question?
Yes, the Korean government has launched 2 national smart city pilot projects. They aim to improve the quality of human life by incorporating advanced technology like ICT, IoT, AI, and big data into the city. So the network facilities are very important and essential. So the infrastructure like the 5G wireless and wired cell phone network and integrated information center required for it. Many project related R&D program are carried out showing a good performance so far. But the smart city pilot project in the initial step now, the consortium of the company with the very excellent technologies and skills was just formed. So the new plan city, new concept city will show the outcome from 2022. So we can see in the near future what kind of technologies apply to the city and what are changed in the life.
Thank you. In the meantime, we have a number of questions in real time. First one is, what do you think should be the ultimate goal of mobility in smart city? This is question for Amy, Dr. Amy Hocharo. Can you answer this question?
Yes, thank you. So I think that the future of mobility for any city will vary by that city itself. And it would also be very hard to predict that. People that made predictions a year ago before COVID are probably kicking themselves now because the world changes so rapidly that it's hard to predict. But what I would say is that people should think about a future state of their city, which is why we talk about connected places. And when you think about that future state of the city, then you can plan towards the future of mobility for your city in particular. So for example, there are a lot of cities that are a foundation for universities and academia. And you should think differently about the future of mobility for that city than what you might in, for example, London as a central business district. But plan for the future of mobility in that city for the people of that city, not for what the technology might be able to do. And so when you think about a central business district, we might think about urban air mobility, UAMs, I think Mr. Park called it, and that might be the best approach to a future of a central business district. When we think about a university area or perhaps an innovation park, we might think about connected autonomous vehicles, and we want to move towards a future state of connected autonomous vehicles. So I think it really varies, and that's why it's really important to have a granular understanding of where your city is now and where you want your city to move to, and think of it as a holistic approach, because what you decide for the future of mobility will also impact the future of your urban planning systems, the way that you build houses in the future, the way that you plan for green space in the future. So we need to think about the future state of cities when we think about the future of mobility.
Thank you for your answers. There is another question for you. The question is, which countries or cities can be good place to launch your smart city scheme and services? Do you have any ideas?
It's that's a tough one. There are so many. I mean, and everything is changing so quickly. But I think the one thing that I've really learned from, and the importance of something like understanding the city typologies that I presented, is that it depends on what innovation or service you're providing as to who will be a good partner. So you might look to an area like Seoul or Singapore that has a very good existing public transportation system in the city center, and your service is to provide applications on top of that, mobility as a service application, to constantly be improving the state of mobility, in which case you want to know which cities are at that point, and they can use those types of applications. However, there are also cities that, and especially in the UK and in the Middle East, there are many cities that are very car-centric. And what we need to understand in those is what type of services do different innovators have that can help change behavior at the very beginning of planning for the future mobility. So there's no way I could tell you where to work or what makes a good place to work. This depends on the types of solutions that we're looking to apply in different places. However, I would say that the UK is a brilliant place to work.
Okay, thank you for the, I think it's the right answer. By the way, how about any city in South Korea? Do you have any recommendation for any cities to launch it?
Well, I mean, I think that there are a lot of different so I think that both Kaya and Mullet have really put together comprehensive plans for looking at different cities for different reasons, and it's the right approach. There are a plethora of different types of opportunities depending on whether or not you're speaking about Daegu and the future of Daegu or the future of Busan. What do we want to build on top of the existing structure in Incheon? How do we keep building out the smart city districts within Seoul, like Sejong? So I think that there's every level of opportunity for different types of innovations that are happening all across Korea. It's very exciting.
Can I add some comment?
Okay, great.
So from our perspective, we do see a smart city as a two type. So there's a greenfield smart city where there's no resident, so we have to build from scratch. And the second one is the brownfield smart city. So there's some resident. So the typical example for the greenfield smart city can be the NEOM in Saudi Arabia and also Kalimantan in Indonesia. And also in Korea, there can be Sejong or the Busan Eco Data City, and also third generation new city, Samgi Shindoshi in Korea. So on those greenfield smart city, we can provide the full stack of smart city services, not just the mobility services, but the energies and the healthcare and all the how to say 종합 선물 세트 smart city in Korean. And also for the brownfield smart city, we can choose and select some selective services, very customized services for certain cities like Daegu and Incheon. But I think that we have to customize and package the service for each type of smart city.
Thank you for the good answer. There is a question for Mr. Chris Lane. The question is, the many cities say that the citizen engagement is one of the most important aspects of smart cities. Are there any practical examples that include the citizens in innovation process or in your any future mobility portfolio? Could you give us any good practical example? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of practical examples that we've got. So through our future transport zones, we are looking at new modes of transport. And to do that, what we're doing is working with two locations. We're working with Birmingham Airport and working with their staff. And we're working with Warwick University and their staff and students, and really trying to understand what makes them make the decisions that they make. So it's really important to us to understand what will motivate those individuals and how we can then tailor the transport solution to meet their needs. And I think I said in my presentation, it's not just physical needs, it's people's emotional need to travel. You know, what makes you make that decision to take that journey? We've also done some work on mobility as a service, and again with that, we spent a lot of time working with a group of individuals to understand what they liked and what they didn't like about mobility as a service and how it might need to change. And then we've taken that learning into work that we're doing now to take that future mobility as a service forwards through our future transport zones. So yes, citizen-centric is key. We are also doing a very, very deep piece of research into behavioural change and what makes people behave in particular ways, and taking together not just traditional transport data, but retail data and other information to really try and understand individual decisions, but at a much, much deeper level than we've ever done before. And then we'll use that to drive the way we develop future transport.
Thank you. I have a couple of last two questions for Mr. Park. So the first one is, when testing both light, were there any differences in the data set which you gathered from US and Korea?
So there are some common data, and there are some different data when we compare US and Korea. So the basic data we have together for the robotaxi will be the high definition map data and the road data, traffic signal. But the different data can be like this. So when you provide the service like a robotaxi, you have to pick the right PUDO, the pickup and the drop-off point. So in US, there are certain like a different environment, like trees and the roads. Sometimes there's a lot of road without traffic signal. So that can be a different data when we compare the US and Korea. But I would like to pinpoint that the important data we have to gather and analyze will be the service quality data. So for the robotaxi service, it will be important for us to minimize the ETA, estimate time of arrival. So to improve and enhance the service quality of the robotaxi, we have to measure this kind of like a service data. Then we have to analyze the raw data to improve this like a quality level.
Thank you. The other question is that I did not realize that Hyundai had level 4 for autonomous vehicles. Was it purely Hyundai's technologies, or was it combined with other firms' technologies? It's a little hard to answer.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely we do have an internal capability to build the autonomous vehicle, but it was 2019. So at that time, we have like a multiple collaboration with the external startup as a partner. So it is not purely Hyundai technology, but it is a mixture of the Hyundai's and the other startup technology. But earlier this year, we had a big announcement that we established the joint venture called the Motioner together with the top tier like a part company Aptiv. So I mean, you should see the more advanced AV technology either by the robotaxi and any other AV technology-based service in the near future. I will promise.
Thank you for the answers. And the conference is almost over. Lastly, we will listen to each speaker and panel member for about 3 minutes each. Could you give us some final talk? Mr. Christlane, please. Just give us a final talk.
Yes,
for 3 minutes. Yeah. Or less.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think I found this panel discussion and the presentations extremely interesting. I think there are a lot of synergies between some of the excellent work that's happening in Korea and some of the work that we're seeing over here in the UK. I think the one main takeaway for me is to make sure that we continue to be focused on the individual and on the centric and citizen-centric, and that we design services for the future that meet individuals' needs. I think what I would say is that what we're really after is not just smart cities, but sustainable smart cities. And I think for me that means that we need to balance the social life and the social side, the economic and the environmental side, which is a difficult balance to make. But I think if we can get that right, then we've got excellent smart cities of the future. And again, thank you for the privilege of coming and speaking with you.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Amy, please.
Yes. Thank you. So I will keep mine brief because I think we've covered a lot of ground, and this has been a really interesting panel session and a good mix between public and private and partners in Korea and the UK. I think that there's the critical issues that I want to keep emphasizing, and Chris mentioned this as well. One, about human-centered design first and foremost, and then second, the inclusion component. And I think especially as we move into a COVID world where budgets and efficiencies are going to be critical, we have to make sure that no one gets left behind in our drive towards innovation and a future state. Now that's the two critical kind of overarching themes that I would emphasize. But I would say on the technical side of things, just about our two countries and the opportunity to work together, I think that there is excellent alignment between both of our innovation agencies as well as both of our cities. And you will find similar test beds that you are running, that we are also running. And I think that there are academics in our institutions that would be more than thrilled with the opportunity to work with academics in Korea. Because I think the other thing that we all have to be cognizant of when we're thinking about smart cities is that there's a spectrum from having an idea around something, an idea of a flying car, to commercializing that. And what we really want to see is the scaling up of these activities. So the test beds are critical and they're important, but a lot of times things can fall down after a testing phase. And so we really do require both that public and private partnership to work towards a scaling up phase. And I think that's where a partnership between UK and Korean innovators and entrepreneurs can really work well together to scale up some of these innovations in both of our cities. So once again, thank you, 감사합니다. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And Dr. Kim?
Yep. When we talk about the smart city, everyone says that the smart technology is first. Until recently, the many city leaders saw that the smart technologies are primary for the city to be more efficient and livable for people. But hence, new technology is being injected more directly into the lives of the residents. But however, after a decade of trial and error, city leaders are realizing that smart city strategies and solutions start with the people, citizens, not technology. The smartness is not just installing digital interfaces in traditional infrastructure or city operations. We have to think about the people first and the better quality of life for citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Park?
Yes, first of all, it was very great to participate this innovative symposium. So I'd like to conclude with this comment. So Hyundai as a company, we will try our best to provide innovative technology and services with full throttle. But I'd like to ask audience in Korea and the UK and globally, please choose the right solution that is very eco-friendly, like a EV vehicle or the fuel cell EV vehicle, to make this society more like livable. And also, please allow some people who needs your support, like disabled people, children, pregnant people, and also older generation who might be obsoleted from these innovative services, but we have to build our mobility solution that can accommodate these people. So our vision, Hyundai Motor Group's Smart City vision, will be making the human-centered smart city that is more caring and enabling and vitalizing the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Lee, please.
Yes, smart mobility plays a vital role in smart city and shows a very powerful wave these days. So as many presentators mentioned, COVID-19 is changing the mobility characteristic. So we need to understand the change and try to respond by applying the smart mobility concept by with the technology, advanced technology and information system. All the elements should work together in a platform and harmonize to see the better performance. Also, we need to think about the incentive, regulation, and necessary political supports to ensure efficiency and sustainability. Today, I had a good opportunity to share good information and run recent smart mobility trend. Thanks to all participants in this section. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. I believe this session gives us good opportunity to share smart mobility knowledge and make a good collaboration between the two countries, the UK and the South Korea in the near future. So it is time to announce this smart mobility session. Before making an end, for the audience, if you have any further question, please send an email to the Kaya or the presenters or panelists. It would be good. And it is time to announce that this smart mobility session concludes the third Smart City International Symposium. Thank you to those who are interested in this event and to those who have watched it to the end. I hope you all enjoy this symposium. I believe you have a lot of insight from this symposium with respect to smart city and smart mobility. Thank you so much. Good night, good afternoon in the UK. Thank you so much.
With the closing of the Smart Mobility session, all of the sessions for the third Smart City International Symposium are now finished. We've been through some difficulties in organizing this event due to COVID-19 outbreak, but on the other hand, it brings an opportunity to think about next steps needed to move forward after this pandemic situation. Again, we appreciate all of our guests of honor and speakers who are with us today, and also would like to express our sincere gratitude to all speakers who participated live from the UK, the British Embassy, to South Korea, who gave us big support. Thank you everyone for your participation, and we hope to see you next year. Thank you.
첨단 기술로 무장한 똑똑한 세상. 도시 관리의 효율성을 높여 우리 삶의 질을 한층 높여줄 스마트 시티가 점차 모습을 드러내고 있습니다. 우리 정부는 이미 세종과 부산, 대구와 시흥 등을 중심으로